Hey. Do you like to defy your own expectations? Well, my guest today has spent a lifetime defying his own and other people's expectations. Um, Hope you enjoy this episode. I'm so excited to interview this guest. So, awkwardly awesome podcast and episode 31 and 1.5 1.25 whatever. Okay, let's go.
Today's guest, Pflipsen, also known as Rhino.
I'm so excited to have Ryan on today. Let me tell you a bit about Ryan. Ryan's vision is to change the world one kind act at a time. Born with Spina Bifida, Ryan hasn't let his physical impediments sideline him, but instead has charged ahead with the strength of a rhino, earning 2 master's degrees and becoming a powerful speaker who inspires and encourages audiences to give their all to their careers, their relationship, and their lives. Ryan, otherwise known as Rhino, lives in San Antonio with his wife Angela. Please help me welcome the Rhino himself. Well, I actually need to do something. Okay. Okay. Now he's coming on. Ready, set, Ryan. Hey, Ryan.
Jason. Thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction.
You're welcome. Thanks for being on Awkwardly Awesome Podcast.
My pleasure. Glad it's about time. I've been looking forward to it.
Sweet. So, we went to the same high school. You're young and a few years younger than me. I was in the same grade as your older brother.
Yeah, actually, my younger brother.
I'm
a couple of years older than you guys.
Okay. You all listen to what one has to say. Say, don't so much listen to me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Hey, I'd love to have more hair and be younger.
So what year did you graduate?
91.
So when I was a freshman, you were a senior.
Yep, you got it.
So you went on to earn 2 master's degrees.
Yes.
What was the best part of that schooling, and what was the most challenging part?
Well, yeah, 2 master's degrees seems like a great accomplishment, and I don't know, I was never really kind of the bookworm and loving of school, but part of the obstacles in my education, and I know that we'll talk about, having spina bifida, one of the other things that I have is visual impairment. I'm blind in my right eye, and so I never really loved reading and being in the books, but didn't let that stop me. And when we left O'Gorman, I went off to Fargo Moorhead to Moorhead State, and thought, with some of the experiences that you had and I've had having medical conditions, I had an experience between my sophomore and junior year of high school, actually, where I had some medical complications and spent about a month in the hospital, and kind of through that experience gained an appreciation for the medical field and realized, they're not just poking me because they want to poke me with needles and, do all this stuff. And so I thought, hey, it'd be cool. Let me go be a doctor. And so I entered undergraduate at Morehead State thinking, okay, I'm going to be a biology major and go to medical school because I hated, I didn't do well in chemistry, but loved kind of the dissection and the biology stuff. And through that experience, had some academic challenges again, and it wasn't, the grades weren't there to go, into medical school, being a challenge. And through that, and just through the experiences that I've had, I remember growing up and we'd go on vacation and, mom would sit with me and my dad would run off with my brother doing something if we were like at a theme park or whatever. And it was just kind of fun to just sit and observe people. And so I thought, okay, fast forward to the summer between my sophomore and junior year of college. And it's like, okay, this biology thing's not working out. What do I want to do? And so I thought, okay, I've thought about and heard about this, field called social work, and then there was psychology and education and counseling education, and the latter two, I heard you had to have a master's degree to go on and really do something. And for psychology, even a doctorate. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of schooling, having to read with, one good eye and all that. And so I thought, okay, let me do social work. So I went into social work and got a bachelor's degree in social work, and just, I loved it, and had the opportunity to go on, like you said, for 2 master's degrees. And ironically, the first one wasn't a master's in social work. I did go and get that. That's my second master's degree that I got from a Catholic university down here in San Antonio in 2004, a university called Our Lady of the Lake University. But the first master's degree was from another Minnesota State University, Mankato State. And one day my undergrad chair of the social work department comes at me with this brochure, and he's like, I think you might like this. And it was program for a Master's of Science in Rehabilitation Counseling. And for those that don't know what that is, it's basically counseling and helping individuals with disabilities. So I really, that obviously rang true with having spina bifida and some of those challenges, and being able to get the degree to kind of help people with disabilities. And then, like I said, I went on and I actually wanted to work more in a hospital-based setting, and my rehab counseling degree didn't allow me to do that. So that's why I went back and got the master's in social work.
Fascinating. I'm so thrilled to be asking Ryan questions, but if any of you watching have questions, please put them in the comments and I'll ask them. Let's try to stump Ryan, okay?
Yeah. I'm being stumped.
Just kidding.
Hey, that's part of challenges. Sometimes you don't know it, know things, and that's okay.
So shifting gears a little bit here, you love the water.
Yes.
When did your love for the water begin?
I took swimming lessons through a volunteer that came to what we know as Children's Care Hospital and School in Sioux Falls. I'd go on a Wednesday night from about 5:30 to 6, and this Red Cross volunteer, Mrs. Schwarting, would come. She actually, during the day, I think, was like the curator or an employee at the museum there in Sioux Falls, and did that. And I had swimming lessons from her for years, from like age 5.
Like one-on-one swimming lessons, or was it a group?
It was one-on-one at one point, but there was a point where there were a few other kids with disabilities. I remember some females. Don't remember any names or anything like that. Shoot, you and I could have probably been in that. I don't know. It's been so long, but she came and we had, like I said, the one-on-one group for a period of time. And then as I got into my teen years, I think it was kind of more back to the one-on-one swimming. And funny thing with that, and talking about the love for the water, I did not love the water. And I think I was going to lessons for maybe 2 years and, about 7, 8 years old. And I still remember this to this day, going from the locker room back up the stairs, climbing the stairs with my mom and, the other mothers and kids that had their kids in tow. And one of the mothers comes and says, as we're going up the stairs, I hear from behind me, "Hey, Ryan, can you do me a favor?" Well, hey, our parents raised my brother and I to be, nice, helpful, young boys. So I'm like, sure, no problem. Okay, next week you have to swim in the deep end. Utter terror. I just committed to something that I was afraid to do. That whole next week was
You
doomed.
just committed to something you were afraid to do.
Absolutely. That next week came and they stuck to their commitment and, dumped me in the deep end. And of course, the moms were all right there and Mrs. Schwarting was right there. And, I don't know, I flailed, doggy paddled, realized, oh, hey, what I've been doing in the shallow end for the last 2 years, I can actually do in the deep end. And just started to really embrace and, love the water and, kept on, learning, the crawl stroke, the backstroke, the breaststroke, all those, swimming strokes that we see on the Summer Olympics coming up.
So in that moment when you went from being afraid of the water to not feeling afraid of it, was that the moment when your love began?
I'd say so. Yeah. I realized in any action that you do or thing that you learn, I think you grow in confidence. And I probably, as a little 7-year-old kid, didn't have that confidence in my own skills, and so it took somebody kind of forcing me to realize, hey, I can swim. I can be okay in the water. I can do it. And I took that and literally ran with it. I think, like we were talking earlier today or in the week, I got to the point where I would swim from one end of the pool to the other underwater, holding my breath. And it kind of became this almost challenge and doing and exceeding what I've done before.
Wow. And we'll get back to the water in a second, but you just told me a story before we came on air about what you would do in 7th grade gym class. Could you tell everyone that? It's amazing.
Sure. Yeah. Just what I had growing up, today, I'm using currently a walker and a wheelchair. I had a hip replacement back in early March, but my normal motif is either the wheelchair or ambulating with forearm crutches. Not the ones that you stick up under your arms if you broke your leg, but literally crutches that have a cuff around the upper arm, around the lower arm, and then a handle to hang onto. And so in 7th grade, junior high back home, what I would do, I started doing is just, I don't know how it started. It was just one of those things to do where, the kids are jump roping, which I can't do. So it's like, okay, do some of these other things. And the gym instructors, teachers had stuff that I could do, but I started goofing around on my crutches and literally lifting my feet off the ground and then propelling myself, one arm at a time, one crutch at a time, from one end of the gym to as far as I could go. And Yeah, just started with maybe walking 6 feet, and okay, I'm kind of losing my balance. Okay, let me get back down on my feet before I hurt myself, and try it again and try it again. And yeah, I think at the point that we got done with, I got done with junior high, and I didn't have gym class in senior high. I think I was able to walk, at least a length of the gym, just like I could swim a length of the pool underwater.
How do you avoid like falling backwards, or do you sometimes?
Being young and daring, I suppose that was a risk, and just kind of leaning a little bit forward more than backward, and still to this day, to be honest, going um upstairs, I kind of angle myself a little bit forward and kind of lean into the stairs and put one crutch in front of the other and go upstairs. But yeah, going downstairs, going down an escalator, when you have to, have a friend or family member grab onto a crutch and take a crutch down, so you can hang on to the side rail of either the stairs or the escalator. But yeah, going downstairs, especially on a moving escalator, it's a little freaky. It's like a misstep and gravity's going to take you down. So, fortunately, I don't think I've ever, thank God, fallen downstairs. But yeah, it's something that definitely is in the back of your mind. But you do what you got to do.
You do what you got to do. Sometimes when people are faced with something, be it financial or physical or whatever, instead of feeling like, hey, I have the power to do what I got to do, they feel more like what why is me, and all, and
Hmm.
things will always be this way, and and that can be really painful. How do you get yourself beyond that mindset? Or is
Yeah,
it a constant struggle, or is it something you figured out a long time ago?
I think, as a human being, having the experience of life, I think, it's a constant trying to figure things out. And some days you think you have it figured out better than others, and some days you don't, and you do struggle. And I think
Mm.
the big thing for me is to get, beyond that struggle and uh, that attitude of I can't do it or woe is me, and realize, hey, what can I do? What can I control in this situation? Let's start from there and take, small steps toward changing in a positive direction. And sometimes, that means that you have to get help, whether from a financial standpoint, if it's some financial planner that can help you maybe work on budgeting, or from a relationship standpoint, or life standpoint, going back to my background academically and professionally, being a clinical social worker, going and seeing a mental health professional or a counselor that, or a licensed professional counselor that can help you through those obstacles. I think going through things is always better being connected to other people and um, getting that support behind you, whether it's family, friends, if family doesn't understand, or whoever it might be. I'm a really big advocate of you know social support and helping overcome obstacles.
Social support. Um, it took me way too long to type that, but I so love that question you said. What can I control in this situation?
Hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's some of when I speak into, and some of the things that I kind of keep it in mind is when things get really busy, just taking that time to stop and reflect on where you're at. I think so many times we get wrapped up in go, 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 busy, busy, busy. I was watching a TED Talk the last couple of days, and I actually shared it in a caregiver support group that I co-facilitate. We had last night, as a matter of fact, and it's the speaker was a gentleman who I think is pretty well known. I know of him. I forget his name offhand, but he's talking about kind of the struggles and the challenges that we've all had to just go through worldwide with COVID, and how that's changed how we do things and what we do, and kind of busy, busy, busy. And it was almost like this forced stop. All of a sudden, we're not as busy because we're all quarantined for a month. And his point at the end of his talk was, letting the paint dry and being okay with letting the paint dry. And where I come from at that is with, being in a wheelchair. I've, shared on my social media and with my tribe and whatnot, and people that I know, with the wheelchair, you gotta, or any vehicle that you use metaphorically in life, however you get going to one day to the other, we gotta take time to retire, literally retire, take the tires off that are worn down and retire them and put new tires on. And for me, that's kind of, it could be a daily thing, it could be a weekly thing, it could be a monthly thing, but I advocate, for daily. If not, we need to take those times during the day, the lunch breaks and other breaks, just to kind of sit and recharge. I especially had to do that and remember to do that when I was doing mental health counseling, seeing folks that are very anxious or very depressed, and I'm trying to help them and motivate them and get them kind of realizing, hey, they have it within themselves to change what they can change, and kind of let go of what they can't change in their situations, but to, treat themselves well, self-care, and doing what you can.
During a busy day, what might retiring look like? You mentioned taking even 5 minutes, but
Mm-hmm.
what would you suggest doing during those five minutes?
Whatever you find recharging, and for everybody, it's going to be different. For some people, it might be getting outside, going for a short walk. Uh, Prior to my surgery, I was rolling out to the street here where I live and rolling up the street just to get some fresh air, and rolling maybe a half hour, when I was working, I would try and do the same thing. I would get out, get some fresh air. I had some offices that didn't have that natural light that is so, I think, nurturing to life, and we need that. I think they say the vitamins E and stuff that come from
Mm,
sunlight. But music,
mm,
music, very peppy, upbeat music is
mm,
recharging for some people. Some
mm.
people getting away in, quiet space, reading a book might be, for a few minutes, might be recharging to them. But yeah, find what that is, for yourself. And again, it's going to be different for, I think, everybody, but definitely take those times where you're taking a break. And even if it's just, and again, kind of more from a professional standpoint, if you want to get into, meditation or visualization. One thing that I've done with a lot of patients and clients over the years is just, when you're in a stressful situation, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and picture yourself in what a safe place might be for you. It might have been, for me, it's a camp that I went to as a kid in Minnesota, Camp Courage. Uh, Ironically, another safe place for me is kind of as a teenager, I went to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, which, had some of the medical struggles and stuff. But I remember sitting one day before an appointment down in the lobby, and Mayo Clinic back then looked like a hotel. You're not walking into a medical clinic, you're walking into a hotel, and kind of this nice vacation kind of attitude. And I sat there with a cup of coffee that I got from this lobby kiosk cart one had, and they had this nice revolving sculpture. It was kind of like triangular and cylinder, and so you had this at the top and the bottom, and it rotated. And so as it rotated, it had triangles kind of facing out as well, and each of those panels were different colors. And so it was just very soothing to just stop there for a few minutes and relax and just watch the colors. And it could be something just as simple as that, finding, I know there's a lot of folks, myself included, that struggle with maybe being online too long, especially during COVID. You're zooming here, zooming there, and doing all this stuff on social media. But I have some different things on my phones with different apps, Calm being one, Abide being another. There's several of them out there where it can kind of just take you through kind of just relaxing music, relaxing scenes. Even, I think at one point I had a PowerPoint that I had just flipped through that had a collection of beautiful scenery. It was kind of nice to look at.
There's so many options. So many options.
Trying to keep. Go ahead.
Speaking of retiring, my computer is actually going to retire if I don't get it charging. So do you want to talk about your suspenders in Pflipsen? Well, I get my charger cord.
Absolutely. So
cool. Yeah, I'll be right back.
All right, we'll be here. So yeah, my suspenders I got about earlier this year, and part of kind of my brand and some of the things that, like Jason and I were talking about, that I talk about, having a visual impairment, I see things differently than maybe some of you that have two good eyes. I lost my vision at about age 6 or 7 due to a secondary condition from the spina bifida called hydrocephalus, which literally means water on the brain. And so I had what they call a shunt put in. It's kind of for those up in the north that know what a sump pump is, that pumps water out of your basement so it doesn't flood and get wet. It's kind of how I describe the shunt. And they don't know why I really went blind in my right eye, but yeah, I did. And through just talking about that challenge, kind of thought about a prism and the glasses. Sometimes we hear rosy glasses, and you look at kind of life in a different way. And with the suspenders, kind of takes on that meaning for me, the rainbow that comes out of the prism. And also I've come to kind of talk about that as my way, and encouraging others to use be the rainbow for somebody's cloudy day, and have that on some of my social media sites. But yeah, people go through challenges, and sometimes you get stuck in those clouds and the challenges and the struggles. And so if somebody that's going through that challenge, one thing that helps, that we talk about in counseling and social work, is helping other people actually helps you feel better. There's kind of the natural endorphins and things that make you feel better just by helping somebody else. It kind of takes your mind off your struggles. So I always want to encourage you guys and encourage you to share that, be the rainbow that brightens somebody else's day that you might know, and reach out definitely to friends maybe that you haven't heard from in a while, or that are struggling with something. And I see Jason's back.
That's amazing. Speaking of being a rainbow in somebody else's day, can you talk just a little bit about being a counselor at Camp Courage and inspiring the and how in English, Jason, English, and how you inspire the campus. You were the counselor, they were the campus. Yeah, how you inspired the campus.
Yeah, I was actually a camper at Camp Courage for about 5 years, and then did the regular camp for a couple of years, and then did their sports camp where I focused on swimming. But we got an opportunity to kind of the first day get exposed to all the other sports. But I loved it so much that when I got to the summer after my freshman year of college, that was my first opportunity. Might have been before that first the summer after my senior year of high school. I got the opportunity to go back to Camp Courage, and I was a junior counselor, and it was
So you
just
were literally giving back to a camp that had nurtured you for 5 years.
absolutely. And it's funny, I
That's
couldn't do.
beautiful.
This is the funny part, though, Jason. I couldn't, do the heavy lifting and transfers of, the kids that were in the wheelchairs and things like that. So where did they hire me for? There was another part of the camp at Camp Courage that called the Woodlands, and it was kids with speech and language impediments and behavioral challenges. I don't know if that kind of led me to, into the social work and that sort of thing, but thinking back to that, it was definitely, I think, an eye opener, and you definitely had the opportunity to kind of mentor the kids, and I would when we'd be on break and the other side of camp would not, and I'd stick around camp. I'd go over to the side of camp with the kids with the physical challenges and disabilities, and hang out if I could, and they'd let me. But fast
And
forward.
what was your message for the kids in general?
Yeah, I think the message for the kids there, and another camp that was developed just specifically for kids with spina bifida in future years called Spirit Camp that Dr. Blake was a part of. I did more mentoring at Spirit Camp where he and I would talk to the kids after dinner for about half hour, an hour. We'd have them while the counselors maybe prepared for the evening, fun activity, whatever that might be. And one of the nights at Spirit Camp that we would do is, show these examples and talk about these examples of individuals with disabilities who overcame their disabilities. And,
Hmm.
I would be part of that role model as well, saying, hey, yeah, you can go to college. You can do this, that after high school, and have a productive life, and do some things that you want to do. Yeah, and we'd have examples of. I remember one was I don't know that name, but a pitcher that was had one arm that was an amputation, so he was literally pitching and trying to catch with one good arm. Had probably a stump for the other. I know a gentleman who was a competitive surfer, and he started a foundation after he had a surfing accident. And like I said, I think earlier in the week we were talking about, had an opportunity to participate in his program. I want to say it's Life Rolls On, and so they they go around the country along the coast, east and west. And a couple of years ago, they came to the Texas coast and put on a program for a day. And so giving the kids kind of those visual examples of folks that have done positive things, whether it's in sports or other areas, uh, and inspire and encourage them to do what they want to do, and help them do it. And that's kind of part of where I think my social work and my vocational rehab counseling training kind of comes into play, and helping folks, whether they are able-bodied or disabled, don't have a disability, realize, hey, what are your abilities? What can you do? What do you want to do? What do you love doing? And kind of help them get steered in the right direction.
As you're talking, I'm thinking it's so important that we maintain a vision of what's possible, and when you and Dr. Blake showed these kids those stories of different people who had done things, maybe maybe the campers had never been exposed to, hey, it's possible for me to do much more than I've been thinking, and
Mhm.
it's such a great thing to just keep expanding our awareness of what's possible for our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Speak.
And
What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, yeah. And, that's a challenge, I think, for all of us. Sometimes, you don't know what's possible until you see it. And you don't know what's out there until you see it and have these experiences. So again, just encourage folks, if you want to do something or you're thinking about doing something, um, you know, uh, just keep talking to people, and you end up talking to a lot of people and engaging and loving life and living life. And you find things that, wow, you probably never would have considered. I mean, 20 years ago, if you would have said, hey, one day you're gonna, surf in the Gulf of Mexico, I'm like, right, sure. But these are presented to you, and you run with it.
Speaking of that, how did you come to have the idea that you wanted to go through lifeguard training?
Yeah, that's one of the other things I think. When I was talking about the swimming, one of the things that I thought, hey, all the kids, they go to swimming lessons, my brother included. And I think he actually did do some lifeguarding at one of the golf clubs in Sioux Falls. And that'd be kind of cool summer job. And so I think it was my senior year during Christmas break, went to the YWCA where they had a week long or 2 week long lifeguard training. Okay, hey, I'm a good swimmer. Let me, I've been taught well by Mrs. Schwarting. And hey, this is just kind of it's almost like you get here and you want to go here. What's the next step? And with goals, I think it's the same thing. What's the next step I can take? And so for swimming and getting as far as I did, doing lifeguard training was kind of the next thing. And I did. I tried it and, did all the book stuff and passed that
Were
with
there
flying colors.
voices in your head that said, "Nah, I can't do that"? Did
I,
you have
you know,
those voices, no?
not that I, necessarily recall. It was more the voices of, darn it, you can do this. And, just the challenge of doing it. And I think when I got done with the training, I hadn't passed, but I think it was 4 uh, of the proficiencies in the water that I had to do. And so they gave me like one more year. And so when I went to Camp Courage and was working with the kids that had the speech and language impediments and the behavioral stuff, I worked with their waterfront staff, who were all obviously lifeguards, on breaks and stuff when the kids were on rest and in the evening, and tried to pass those things that I hadn't passed. And a lot of it was dealing with this torturous 1 pound or 10 pound black brick. The one thing I had to do was tread water for 10 seconds. Well, if you're holding a 10 pound brick in one arm and trying to paddle with the other hand to keep yourself up above the water and don't have very good leg strength, you're gonna go down. But I think that was one of the 4 that I did eventually do. And then the other was going down, retrieving that brick off the bottom and bringing it back up within like 10 seconds or something like that. The 2 that I couldn't do or didn't have the opportunity to complete were like an 18-second sprint. Again, not having the leg power behind me. I think I did it like 23 seconds or something like that. So I got close. And then the other was swimming down, getting the brick off the shallow end and trying to get out of the shallow end with that, kind of weighing me down, and swimming back. And I think we had like a minute or two, minute and a half to do that. But
It must have been so exhilarating to do the 2 that you did.
absolutely, to really sit back and think, okay, I was the first disabled or non-able lifeguard in the state of South Dakota. okay, but if it inspires somebody else to do that and be able to accomplish that, great. And you sit and we're talking about swimming and the Olympics coming up here this year that got postponed from last year. And I don't know if folks know that are watching, but after the Olympics, it doesn't get as much coverage. They have what they call the Paralympics, literally parallel Olympics, just like parallel transportation, paratransit that we use. And the Paralympics are for those with physical and other challenges, mainly physical, and it pretty much parallels all the sports, or a lot of them, that they do in the regular Olympics. And they have that for, I think they take a break for like a few days or a week, and then they start those after the closing ceremonies of the the regular Olympic Games. But you have athletes with physical challenges that compete, and some of those, they could probably, the swimmers could probably kick my ass in the water. Some of these guys that, just they have one good leg because the other's amputated. It's amazing to see. Unfortunately, the networks don't pick up on it when it's going on like they do the Olympics. But I know that there's a movement to kind of change that and get that so that we can see it more. And with social media, I think there are the opportunities to follow. I think the Paralympics does have a Facebook group and things like a page. So you can now, with social media and things, see those things live. But if you want to watch it on the TV, usually I think, is it NBC that has the Olympics? I think like 2 or 3 weeks later, they'll do like a couple hour special on the Paralympics. But yeah,
But
those are
as
just
you're saying, that it should really be broadcast because it's so important for people to see these role models like actually doing competing on an international level instead of just saying I can't do this, but instead of saying I can't, like working and figuring out how to do it. And so this would be the absolute perfect time for you to talk about the acronym ABLE. Does
Awesome.
that acronym mean anything to you?
Of course. Yeah, ABLE was an acronym that I, again, created probably around the time talking about the prism and perception. And ABLE for me stands for attitude, belief, leadership, and empowerment. And just like we're talking, getting up every day and having a positive attitude. And for me, that means, getting involved in, looking at scripture perhaps, or reminding myself of a favorite scripture for me, which is Luke 1:37, for with God nothing shall be impossible. I actually had a friend that interviewed me in college. She was a special ed major, and this happens every once in a while still today. But back in college, the real quick, the special ed department and I think it was the mass communications journalism students, they had to do an interview, like a human interest story. And so this friend, Darby, had approached me one year, and I was impressed. We'd never talked faith or, attitude or anything. And just, had interactions with her. She was one of the clerks, I think, in this bookstore, or the bookstore's little convenience store. And I always kind of, when somebody interviews me or does a paper, and I just had a UTSA student here last week get to talk with me for about an hour about the disability experience, I always like to request, hey, let me have a copy of that. And top of Darby's paper was that verse, for Luke 1:37, with God nothing shall be impossible. And getting things like that to help with mindset. I follow, folks over the years like the Jack Canfields and the Mark Hansons that wrote Chicken Book for the Soul, probably in the library, my little office around the corner here. Got probably a collection of those books that, I've read over the years, and just those stories that just motivate you. Looking at social media, the positive things in social media, some of the quotes and things, and some of the positive mental health and attitude type groups that you're in, just soaking in all of that positive attitude stuff, because life is going to just, boom, 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 come at you, like we were saying earlier. And so taking that break to retire first thing in the morning, really, and looking at the attitude and doing that throughout the day. And then having the,
So
go ahead.
attitude and then belief.
And then, I was just going to go to belief in yourself. I think first and foremost, like we were saying earlier, if you don't believe in yourself, get around people that do believe in you. If it's hard at home, find those people, those friends that do believe in you, that, hey, you can get through that struggle. I'll help you. And really, the attitude and the belief in what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, and having that strong core values and beliefs. What do you believe? What are your core values? A lot of mine is passion, determination, helping others, those sorts of things that I talk about a little bit too, as far as kind of what's at the center of your life. And then the L, leadership. And first and foremost for me, and again, this is a work in progress for all of us. This, you talk about with your folks, the imperfect best. Leadership, starts here, starts with you, and doing those daily habits, having that attitude check, having that belief check, and just being yourself first and foremost, and doing those things, habits and things that are healthy, that get you pointed in the right direction for those goals that you want. And really asking yourself, what do you want and why do you want it? And I was listening on a podcast that actually a Paralympian athlete, Jessie Strackham, did yesterday. She's doing kind of a week-long thing, and one day here was exercise. But yesterday she had a speaker on who was talking about going kind of like a 7-layer dip, going 7 layers deep. And in counseling and social work, we kind of talk about this as Socratic questioning, going back to Socrates. And it's just asking yourself, why 7 times? You want to do whatever that is, or you want whatever that is, a good relationship, a good job. You want this job. Why do you want that job? Okay. And then asking yourself, after you get that answer, why do you want it? 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 7 times. And I think that just is a good, kind of discipline and kind of leadership check. And kind of once you get to that point where, things, again, for all of us, and, life has its bumps. And I have a visualization of a wheel that we can talk about too. But once you can lead yourself, and have some of that attitude and belief and the leadership principles and things and the core values that get behind you, then you can empower others. And maybe you can even empower others before that. But you get kind of through that process of able and realize what your abilities are. And then you can, like I have empowered, some of the campers and others that I've had in the opportunity in my life and through personal and professional means to say, hey, you don't have to be a victim. You can be the hero in your life. You can do it. And, get around people that can support what you want to do and help you do it. And, you empower them as opposed to enabling them. And it's like for those that know the scripture verse, teach a man to fish, he eats, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. It's kind of that whole same thing. So depending on audience and whatnot, I tend to, weave scripture verse and things into and talk more about the faith aspect too. But yeah,
Wonderful.
That's the ABLE acronym for me, and kind of what it's come to mean for me, and some of the different pieces of my life that I've kind of pieced together, and talking about ability and what you can do, whether you have a disability or not.
In the last 10 minutes, I want to talk about two things that are related. So recently you've alluded to it, but haven't gone into it. You had this opportunity to have a surgery, and a lot of people might be like, calling a surgery an opportunity, but can you talk a little about why it was this huge opportunity?
Absolutely. And yeah, I think as you were promoting today, you alluded to it and mentioned, and I always, growing up, it was kind of a joke. I'm 48 now, but probably in my 20s and 30s, the joke was, oh, I'm, 28 and I've had, 28 surgeries, or I have 28 incisions on my body. Now, I don't think that's probably kept up, but
Shocked.
this more recent surgery was kind of going through this process of, yeah, I was having more pain, and we were joking, or talking earlier in middle school, junior high, I was lifting my legs up and walking without them, just on the strength of my arms and, my two crutch tips on the ground. But my ambulation motif, so to speak, for the last probably 20, 25 years, because I have a right leg that's shorter by about a half inch, was I would hop. And so I would just have 3 points on the ground. And I'd go to orthopedists, being here in San Antonio and connected with UT Health over the last, decade or more. And some hip docs would say, ooh, it's not a good idea to have a hip replacement. Finally, had the opportunity, getting a new, hadn't been to a hip doc in a couple of years. This is during COVID, probably I went and saw my PCP, my GP, my primary care doctor, in September or whatever, to get the flu shot, get a physical, all the labs and stuff, and referrals to all the specialists that I see. And he referred me to a hip orthopedist again, and get talking to this guy. And he's like, yeah, you have some hardware in your hips from, when you were 6, but I think, we can take them out and, saw off the head of the femur and put in a hip joint. And I kid you not, I've shared the x-ray. I think I shared the x-ray with you and some other close family and friends. And it's just amazing to look at that and see how things just, before they were kind of askew, and now they're lined up. And it's awesome. And I've walked on the new hip when I was in rehab back in mid-March. And now I'm looking forward. I just started physical therapy again here at home this week, and we're working to get my endurance and strength up on the walker, walking, I think, like 500 or 1,000 feet, so I can get out to the front of complex where I live and be able to hop in an Uber or a Lyft or a paratransit van without having to take the walker or the wheelchair and be back on my crutches. So, and I have a few restrictions still, that I can't like bend forward past 90. So, no bowing or anything like that. I'm being careful in the chair I'm talking, to you right now and whatnot, but, I can't cross my legs and some things. So that's been a little challenging, but hopefully come June 6th, those will come off. And, the bone in the hip, it's not prosthesis, but the hip hardware, I guess you'd say, the artificial hip, will be fused enough where I can rock and roll and charge ahead.
Charge ahead like a rhino.
Absolutely.
So, so the process of learning new things and challenging ourselves doesn't really end unless we decide not to go for it. Like you could have said, I just don't want another surgery. I've had 28. I know how to hop.
Yeah, absolutely. And even to Go ahead, Jason.
But instead you say, yes, this is an opportunity. This is something that will help me grow, and
And it was
that's
something,
powerful.
and it was something that I wanted. And so I had to figure out, the steps to how. And, in that situation, it's going and seeing an orthopedic surgeon. I remember growing up, two little quick stories that I think are funny about just, overcoming and challenges and doing things. Kind of the second one I think is kind of funny, but the first one, going to Garfield Elementary, the art teacher's room, the music teacher's room, the gym where we ate and did gym class, all that was downstairs, along with, I think, the sixth grade classrooms. I had to learn and take the time to walk up and down the steps. There wasn't an elevator in my elementary school. And so my principal, Mr. Johnson, would take the time when we had those special classes and we had to go downstairs. He would walk with me either ahead of the class or behind the class, so the teacher could then take the rest of the students. But the funny thing that came out of that, I learned to count in Spanish to like 20, because there were like 20 steps. So it's like uno, dos, tres. And, later took Spanish when we were at O'Gorman High School for a couple of years, and, that was okay at it. But the other funny thing was that I tell people is, with my hand-eye coordination, being blind in one eye, tying shoes was a challenge. And so I learned to do it. Some might have heard of like the bunny ear method or something like that, where you do 2 loops and cross them in such a way. Well, I was probably 34 and home on, vacation up in South Dakota. Mom seeing me tie my shoe with 2 loops. She's like, "You still tie your shoes with 2 loops? Really?" And so she sat there, and we sat there, 34-year-old, and she's like showing me how to tie with 1 loop. And eventually, back at, age 6 or 7 or 5 or whatever I learned, I couldn't get it. But at 34, I finally got it.
Awesome.
Perseverance and determination. And to add to that further, you go to formal occasions and, holiday parties and stuff, and I've got a tuxedo or 2 and the black tie and whatnot. And, you have the ones that you can just clip on. Well, I thought, hey, you see in the movies, the James Bond and the this, that, and the other. I have the ones that hang down. Oh, wow, there's a bow tie you can tie. Well, guess what? Learning to tie the bow tie actually helped me tie the shoes, and vice versa, because it's basically the same way if you stop and think about it. But I'm sitting there on social, YouTube, or looking at these images on Google, how to tie a bow tie. I'm like, holy cow, that's how you tie a shoe with 1 loop. And so it's just funny things like that you just learning and learn what you learn and assimilate, and do it however you have to do it basically you figure out a way.
So you figure out a way, which is a great lead into the last question. You've made my job so easy. But so I love talking about imperfect best. And and do you want me to describe it briefly? I love asking.
Yeah, go for it, for your audience and my audience that may not follow you as much.
So to me, imperfect best means we have the vision, we have dreams, we have goals. That's the best. We envision and we hold to that. But when the imperfections come up, we use those imperfections as moments to be gentle with ourselves, as moments to learn from. We ask what opportunity there might be in those moments, and then we go forward instead of using the imperfections as reasons to stop. No, I like asking all my guests what does imperfect best mean to you?
I think we align really well with that. And when we were talking about, the tire and retiring, taking those pauses and just being able to evaluate whether, whenever it is, what you're doing, why, and doing going forward what you want to do in the best way you can, and realizing the way you do it and the best way you do it is okay. It's
Hmm.
not, and it's not perfect. I think there's a quote by Vince Lombardi talking about, you don't something like, you don't have to be perfect, just be excellent. And
Hmm.
so that's, I think, part of the
Beautiful.
imperfect best. Yeah, do your best, be excellent,
Well,
and yeah, charge ahead.
like a rhino.
Yeah,
Well,
I
thanks so much for sharing your stories and wisdom with the Awkwardly Awesome podcast audience. It's been a pleasure to have you on. I've learned so much personally, and I think everyone else will too.
Oh, my pleasure, and I'll leave you with in our audiences with this, Jason. I know when I've seen your TED Talk, you do some things as far as pointing to yourself, and one thing that I've developed over the last probably couple of years, and I'll just share with the audience, and we can end with this, is sticking your index finger and your thumb up, and if you look at that and maybe curve it a little, it kind of looks like two rhino horns, and so I always love saying, horns up and charge ahead.
Horns up and charge ahead. And the very last thing, is there some way you want people, if they want to get a hold of you, what will be the best?
Absolutely. Shoot, I'm all over, social media, either as Ryan Pflipsen or Pflipsen. First five letters of my last name followed by my last name. On Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I think I'm even on Twitter. But if people want to reach out, I am perfectly fine with, a text or a call. I have a Google number that I think is 210
Two,
50.
two
I'll
one
say it slow.
zero 50
504
4
9576.
9576.
I'd give my email, but email tends to get inundated. I have like over 100 a day. I need to figure out how to screen some of that, but I think if somebody reached out via email, it might get overlooked. So definitely reach out to me in those other ways. And happy to help, whether it's, whatever the issue is, or if somebody wants to have me, share with their group, their audience, some of what we talked about today. Happy to serve in any way. One of the things I talk about, going back to the values, is having a servant's heart. And so anytime that I can add value and help somebody, definitely want to do that.
Thank you, and please reach out to Ryan. As you can hear, he's brilliant and has so much experience and so much to teach. So is that your number, 210-504-9576?
Correct. That is.
Good, cool.
You got
Well,
it.
thanks so much, Ryan, and
My pleasure.
cool. Have a wonderful day. Thank you all for tuning in. Yeah, wasn't Ryan amazing? I know your time is valuable. Thanks for sharing some of it with Awkwardly Awesome Podcast, and tune in next week. Same time, 1 Pacific, 2 Mountain, 3 Central, 4 Eastern for our Grow Awesome podcast. Have a great week and hope to see you then.